Hello again, everybody, back in the UK and joining us around the world, the English-speaking world. Well, I can tell you, you've been watching this programme for an hour and you know far more about the situation here than the poor old 120,000 people sitting in the grandstands here in Indianapolis. On my way up to the commentary box, which is above the main grandstand here on the pit straight, I talked to a few punters and said, have you any idea what's happening here today? And none of them had any clue about what's happening, and I have a feeling their reaction in a few minutes' time, when all the Michelin teams peel into the pit lane to withdraw basically from this Grand Prix before the start happens, it might be a little bit worse than Austria in 2002 when Ferrari switched the cars on the finish line, if you remember that. Well, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of when I was a kid and we used to have arguments in the garden about what the rules were going to be for the football match. And I'm amazed that the combined brains, the racing brains, the marketing brains, the media brains, the brains of people like Bernie Ecclestone here, 75 years of age, so long in the racing business, the promoter, the genius that built this sport. Charlie Whiting, for many years chief mechanic at Brabham, he knows all the rules in all the games. There he is, the race director, such an experienced man. There's the wisdom of Solomon on so many occasions when there have been difficult calls. I'm amazed they've not been able to come up with a solution that works for everybody. Looks like it's set to be the biggest farce since the Grand National in 1994, which just didn't get started. The trouble is, this one is in front of a global audience. Jean Todt there, the boss of Ferrari, talking with Bernie Ecclestone. Sadly, we're not quite close enough to hear what's being said. But you can see both sides of the argument, really. Michelin have made a desperate mistake with their tyre choice for this weekend, and they're simply not willing to accept any of the conditions proposed to them by the FIA in which they could race. They could have penalties at the end of the race by using different tyres. They could simply go slowly through the bank to turn 13. Michelin aren't prepared to do any of those things. They're not prepared to give away any performance. They say, if you put a chicane in, we'll race. And the FIA say, well, we're not going to do that, and that's the end of the day. Ferrari's point of view, and Bridgestone, you can see that as well. I mean, they withdrew Michael Schumacher in Spain when he had 2 tyre failures because the tyre wasn't safe. They looked for some sympathy from the Michelin teams. They wanted some redrafting on the tyre regulations for 2005, and of course the Michelin teams all said, no way, we're not going to play ball with you. So you can't blame Ferrari and Bridgestone on a day like today from wanting to profit to the maximum with 18 points for Schumacher and Barrichello. It's a right old mess, Martin.
It is indeed, yeah. Imagine Ferrari came in and had a fundamental brake issue, and they said, look, we need to take one of the corners out so we have one less braking zone. We want you to change that corner. It's a similar situation. As you say, you can see their point of view, but from time to time they've got to stand back and take the point of view, the best view for Formula One itself, otherwise they're scoring a massive own goal. But their cars are ready to race. Of course, you can't test here. This is not one of the nominated test tracks. You wouldn't bring teams over here, so any changes to the racetrack are going to have to be calculated. It's not until you arrive, understand the downforce of the cars and the loadings that's going through those tyres. I'm told there were 11 tyres that failed altogether. 2 of them were to absolute destruction, the 2 Toyotas that we saw, and another 9 were very close to that exact same problem. So it's a fundamental issue. It's not overreacting to a Toyota that may have a specific setup giving a problem. It is that, it's across the board. 2 teams didn't have a tyre issue with Michelin, Renault and BMW Williams, but of course that's not to say they won't have in a 73 lap race. None of them have done that amount of mileage, so we can now only assume, as you say, James, that they're going to peel off. What they mustn't do, in my view, is do a half-hearted start to this Grand Prix, because that will be dangerous. You cannot, it's like a half-hearted soccer tackle or rugby tackle. You'll just get hurt. They cannot go cruising into turn 1 with 4 or 6 guys on the grid racing hard, others going in with different degrees of interpretation of what they're actually doing. Quite clearly the drivers are a little bit rabbits caught in the headlight. The ones I saw on the grid kind of just didn't want to say anything because I'm not sure they know exactly what to say or what the situation is, but away they go then on the green flag lap. But it's interesting that Raikkonen from P2 chose to switch off his traction control and lay some rubber down, suggesting he thinks he's going to start the race anyway.
Well, a huge plume of smoke came out of the back of one of the Jordans leaving the start line. It didn't seem to have been engine related, but it seemed to be, well, it's a strange one that. But listen to the crowd. They're on their feet. they've paid a lot of money, they've travelled a long way to see the US Grand Prix. And what are they going to see? What are we all going to see? Certainly it seems to me that everybody's forgotten who the primary responsibility is to here. It's the sponsors, the manufacturers. This is their biggest marketplace in the world for many of them. BMW, Ferrari, Mercedes-Benz. They sell more cars here than anywhere else in the world. A lot of the sponsors sell more of their products here than anywhere else in the world, and we don't really need to have a bad show here. Formula One just trying to build an audience here. This is our 6th time at the Brickyard. Team radio for Coulthard.
If that is the case, that there's still indecision from the team principals, again, if it comes down to my choice, I want to race.
Well, that's interesting. I wonder.
Well, they're still negotiating, obviously.
Yeah, clearly they are. I know, talking to Mark Webber yesterday, there he is just going through frame now in the BMW Williams. They haven't had too many problems. He feels that quite confident that he could race. It seems we have, instead of a clarity of purpose here, a state of confusion. And Coulthard, for one, is wanting to race. McLaren look like they're getting ready for their cars to come in. Well, you know as little about this as we do. Ted Kravitz, maybe you can offer us something.
And that's the same. McLaren, Williams and Renault, I can see where I am at the moment. And they are all clearing 2 Formula One car spaces for each of their cars to come in and retire.
Here comes Alonso, World Championship leader.
You know our plan is for the start. Straight in the pits, please, mate.
Yeah, well, he knows that because he's on his way in already. Looks like teammate Fisichella just in front of him. And I think that McLaren, Toyota, there's the pole sitter Jarno Trulli pouring into the pits, and just listen to the crowd.
I'm open.
Haven't seen anything like it. They're stunned, we're stunned. 2 Ferraris on pit straight. Will it be 2 Jordans and 2 Minardis? Some talk the Minardis won't do it. There's a Jordan, and ahead of him is a Minardi. So all the Bridgestone runners are going down to the grid. Coulthard was making a late bid to let me go racing. I want to race. I'm prepared to take the risk this afternoon. The problem is, if he has a problem and takes out one of the other drivers or whatever, there's some significant implications and ramifications of that. So it looks like we're going to have a 6-car start. 6 cars outside our window here.
Well, the only people I can see that are happy are a bunch of Indians just below us who can see that Kartikeyan may well be on for a podium here this afternoon. Who knows what's going to happen in the US Grand Prix? It's the strangest race ever, and it gets underway now. Predictably, Michael Schumacher leads away from Rubens Barrichello. The 2 Jordans, they're going to make a bit of a battle with the Minardi. Looks like we might be losing a Jordan already. I saw smoke earlier, I mentioned it off the formation lap. The 2 Minardis there battling with the Jordans as well. And what is the reaction of the crowd? Well, it's stunned silence.
I don't know what it says about the 6 teams that have elected to run, to be honest. Maybe they're contractually bound, but they should have joined up and found the solution too. I think they're probably just as guilty here of doing the wrong things as the guys in the pits in many respects, because they've failed to help a solution be found. We're watching a 6-car race. Thankfully, none of them ran into each other in the first turn.
For the record, Michael Schumacher is leading, Rubens Barrichello is second. That's Thiago Monteiro ahead of Christian Albers. Narain Kartikeyan is 5th, and Patrick Friesacher is 6th, and on for 3 World Championship points here this afternoon. I guess of some interest is who's going to get the final podium slot, because clearly if the 2 Ferraris are reliable up the front, they're likely to finish 1 and 2. It's 73 laps. It's going to take an awful long time here. But who's going to end up the final podium slot? There's a perverse interest in that.
There is actually, isn't there? I know some teams put money on Kartikeyan yesterday and 1 or 2 others for podiums before all this blew up. So that'll be interesting to see how that one works out down at the bookies. So we've got a 4-car scrap for that 3rd place. Barrichello and Schumacher, 0.7 seconds. Louise's hand, David Coulthard.
Well, David, normally if you're talking to me this early in a race, it's because you've had some kind of technical problem. Obviously, a very, very different situation today.
Yeah, you know, I've really a horrible feeling in my stomach. I've never experienced anything like this in my career before, and it's quite remarkable that in the interests of the sport that we couldn't find a resolution that would allow us to go racing. And I understand that it's not the fault of Bridgestone, it's a technical fault with Michelin, they have to pay some penalty. But you know, you have your viewers, we have the crowd here, we've all come here to not race. You know, this is going to leave a long-lasting bitter taste in people's mouths. And as a driver, quite frankly, I'm embarrassed to be part of this situation. But we've been acting under instruction on the grounds of safety from Michelin, and there was no choice left open to us.
Explain to us, there was talk that a chicane would be built and then you would all be happy to race. Why was that chicane not built?
I can't answer that. I believe there was a disagreement from Friday to accept that would be the case, and obviously Charlie made his position on behalf of the FIA quite clear that they didn't feel that they should have to alter the track. But I think this is a unique situation. I think it was one that on the grounds of safety they could have taken that stance. I know it's going to be one of these scenarios now of who should have done, who could have done. The reality is mature adults were not able to come to a resolution that would allow us to put on the show that everyone wants to see in Formula 1. We wanted to go racing, and it's a very sad day for the sport, I have to say.
Thanks, David.
Well, it is a very, very sad day for the sport indeed. We have got a race underway though. The crowd are booing and jeering Jacques Villeneuve. Many times a hero here in North America, winner of the 1995 Indianapolis 500 in front of 500,000 people here at the Brickyard. Certainly one of the high points of his career. This is definitely the low point. That's Jarno Trulli, the pole sitter. In dramatic fashion yesterday, snatched Toyota's first ever pole position in Formula 1. It's all pretty academic now though. Schumacher comes across the line to complete lap 3. He is a second ahead of Barrichello, 5 seconds ahead of Montero. Albers is still chasing after Montero, but it looks like Friesack is being dropped at the back there, so the race goes on.
Absolutely sure of the points position, but I believe it's a point scoring race in that when they take to the dummy grid, effectively that's the warm-up, that's the first lap of the Grand Prix, isn't it? And it means, I think, that they'll score points, whether they've got to get past three-quarter distance to score points, and I'll be poking around in my regulations. But the crowd are booing and the drivers are feeling helpless about that, because they've been innocent bystanders really, and although maybe the GPDA, Grand Prix Drivers Association, should have got together last night too and started jumping up and down and screaming, but if you get a piece of paper from your tyre supplier that says you are not allowed to use any of our tyres in these premises at full speed around the banking, what can you do? You can't go out, you cannot fly in the face of that. The penalties and ramifications of that are just way too scary to contemplate.
Looking down, lots of thumbs down in the crowd as the Ferraris go past. The only people that are happy, as I say, there's two camps that are happy here. There's Ferrari fans who can see a 1-2 finish, and there is a large contingent of Indians who are hoping that Carter Cahan will get himself on the podium, but at the moment it doesn't look like he's going to. Let's just take the time here to explain how we got into this position and what the cause of the problem was. Depending on who you talk to down in the paddock, certainly amongst the Michelin runners, basically the teams play a role in choosing the tyres that Michelin will bring to each race, and Michelin bring a range of different tyres. They offer 2 choices per team. That's not the same 2 choices to every team, and it seems that 1 or 2 of the teams went for quite an aggressive tyre, quite soft, but the one thing that is for sure is that the problem here is that the carcass construction of all of the tyres was the same, so there was no other alternative for people to go to. Michelin tried to suggest flying out some tyres from France overnight Saturday into Sunday, but it would have meant bolting them on and going out on a setup of tyres that the drivers had never even tried before. It would have hugely compromised the performance of the cars, but beyond that, it's against 5 new separate regulations, FIA regulations, that would inevitably have been penalties. All along, Bridgestone and Ferrari have said, along with the FIA, why should we suffer for the terrible mistake that Michelin have made? And that's been the point of no return. There's been no accommodation, no attempt to make an accommodation to that in the interests of sporting spectacle, in the interests of putting on a show not only for the 120,000 people here but also for the rest of the world. Sadly, once again, this man finds himself in the centre of the controversy. He's been the cause of the controversy, Jean Todt, on a number of occasions. He's made some decisions that a lot of fans around the world didn't like, they felt was anti-sporting, but on this occasion you'd have to say he's part of a system. The FIA and Bridgestone and Ferrari are on one side, and everybody, that looks like a bottle that someone's thrown onto the track in disgust. It's a heck of a throw from grandstands to there, I have to say. But anyways, sorry.
The Ferraris are only about a second a lap faster than the Jordans, so they're not really racing either. I've got to say, if it was Ferrari, the teams Bridgestone and the FIA fighting all of the solutions, then they're as guilty as everybody else this weekend. And I hope now they're watching this, they realise the stupidity of it, because this is nonsense, absolute nonsense. Button walking through the paddock with 14 other drivers, 4 drivers on the track, driving the life out of what are very slow cars in the 2 Georges, 2 Minardis, and then 2 fast cars out there not really pushing each other. They're just popping into the 112s now. That's some 2 seconds off the pace.
Now, it's a failure to see the bigger picture. That's the problem. No one denies that, as the thumbs go down from the crowd, no one denies that Ferrari are not at fault here. But it's definitely a failure to see the bigger picture and put a show on. Well, the communications director of Ferrari is Luca Colliani. How's he feeling at the moment, Ted? Is he happy with himself?
Well, no, I mean, he's as sad as the rest of us. Luca, I mean, your guys are racing out there, aren't they, first of all?
Yeah, we are racing. We worked all the day and all the weekend to prepare this race. And what we are seeing now, it's really sad. It's really sad, first of all, for the thousands of people here who have come here to have a great show, and they cannot have it. But I think that this situation is due to the responsibilities are very, very clear, and it's not up to, there are no responsibility up to FIA, because that is mainly a performance problem. So if the public has someone to blame, they know where they have to go.
So you're saying that the blame lies squarely with Michelin. You're saying the blame lies squarely on the shoulders of Michelin Tyre Company.
I think it's clear. I think it's obvious. FIA this morning said that they could have resolved the situation, dropping their performance. They didn't want.
And for anyone to say that, oh well, Ferrari and Bridgestone, you know, what kind of race is this? What would you say to them?
Away nicely from Albers.
On our side, it's a normal race. Now clearly it's important that we don't have any reliability issue, but we are working as good as we would have worked with all the cars together. It's not that it's just for fun. We are racing.
There are suggestions that Ferrari said no, we will not agree to build the chicane at the last corner that would have allowed this race to go ahead. Is that right?
No, because that request has not been. If this request has been done, it has been done to FIA, because it's up to FIA to decide things like this, not up to the team.
Thank you very much, Luca.
Well, there's Luca Colliani, communications director from Ferrari. Well, we saw Jarno Trulli was our pole sitter. He's talking now with Louise Goodman.
Jarno, for the first time ever, a Toyota lines up at the front of the grid. Seconds later, you're in the pit lane. I mean, this is just the most bizarre situation. How do you feel about it?
Well, it's a big frustration for the whole team, for the drivers, for Formula One in general, especially here in front of the USA fans. But we couldn't avoid this situation. We were in danger, we knew it. And it was very clear that Michelin runners couldn't race today.
Do you feel that this situation obviously should have been sorted out? Could it have been sorted out earlier on, and then we could have had a race?
It was quite a complicated situation, I must say, because on one end we had some other teams on Bridgestone which stand up and say, you know, everything is fine for us. This is the rules. This is the track. You have to race. If you cannot compete, you don't compete. And you know, it's fair, because honestly they've done everything right, and unfortunately we have had a problem, probably a manufacturer problem. It's still difficult to understand what was the problem, but we honestly couldn't race like that for Formula One and also for the fans, because would have been stupid.
What kind of message does this send out to all of those fans?
Sorry?
What kind of message does this send out to all of those fans?
I think Formula One has sent the message that they're reasonable, they're sensible. You know, first priority is safe, and today we proved that we are sensible people. We all stand up and say, you know, someone has made a mistake. We're sorry. We are sorry with all fans, but we couldn't race.
Ultimately, who do you hold responsible for this situation?
Well, I'm not the right person to ask about.
Thanks, Jarno.
Nice swerve, Jarno. I'm not sure I agree with the line about sensible people. I don't think anybody's going to take that message away from this US Grand Prix of 2005. Certainly the people who below me in the grandstands are now walking out in disgust, and we've heard them stamping their feet. It's slightly nerve-wracking actually, because we're about 150 feet up in the air above a...
Box.
Oh, he's been called into the box, sounds like. It means pit box. Christian Albers, I hope we're not going to lose one of our 6 runners here this afternoon. Certainly the vibrations at the moment, everyone's stamping their feet in the grandstands, are pretty intense. That was Dickie Stanford, the team manager of Williams, just walking in, and here you can see Minardi team obviously going to bring Albers in. This is lap 11, and it looks like it's for a scheduled stop.
Yeah, he's obviously on some kind of 3-stop this afternoon. Low fuel for qualifying, a little tweak on the front wing to help the balance. Just about the only change you can make during the race, really. Rear wing is very much bolted and fixed into place. So Albers away cleanly. The leading pace still in the 13s. I would have expected them to have been in the 11s and low 12s if they'd have been racing against Raikkonen, Alonso and co. Quite how they're going to work the qualifying starting order out for the next Grand Prix. I guess we'll worry about that in the week for the French Grand Prix. The regulations say you'll only be classified as a finisher if you finished 90% of the number of laps covered by the winner, but I still believe you'll score points. I think the points are still allocated down through the field.
So I know what you're thinking at home. Why has this happened to Michelin and it hasn't happened to Bridgestone? Well, there's a number of different explanations for that. One of them is that Bridgestone is a more conservative company than Michelin. I'll finish that one off in a second, because Louise Goodman's now found the Renault boss, Flavio Briatore.
Flavio, if I can just interrupt your discussion here. Flavio, what kind of message is this sending out to people about Formula One?
Only I'm sorry. I think so the message, I'm sorry for the public, I'm sorry for the spectator, I'm sorry for the people watching TV, I'm sorry. But in another one way, and after the press release from Michelin we have in the morning, really was no question for us to racing.
But how can a multi-million-pound sport that travels around the world, has global exposure, find itself in this situation?
Yeah, normal. Sometimes you have a problem with the car, you know, you break a suspension and you call the driver to come back in the garage. This was technical problem from Michelin, happen. I hope it was not happen, you know, happen a problem like that, and we need at least cure the problem. We are very happy to leave in the people from Bristol in front of us. What we ask is only what Michelin asked, a different configuration of the circuit, and what's possible change.
So why did that not happen?
You need to talk with the federation, I don't know why.
I understand that some of the fans watching this race are now throwing things onto the track. You must have some sympathy with them, even if not with their actions.
The fans is not... the fans is completely right. Right, this is the demonstration Formula One really is doing something, because it's not possible like that, really. We are sad, our mechanic is sad, the driver is sad, we want to race. We want to race. And we don't care about Ferrari starting front or whatever. It was not the case of the point. We want to race with no point. Only for make sure the under 50, but we want to race in the safety of our driver. Simple like that.
Thanks, Flavio.
Exactly. What they should have done is said, okay, all Michelin runners, we will not score points today. We will not score points, but we will go out there with a chicane. Schumacher leads by 0.8 of a second from Barrichello. Lead down to 0.6 now, James. Barrichello in the 12s, Michael in the 13s. The oil flags there are for debris on the track. It means slippery track rather than oil flags, always referred to as the oil flag. But we know that to be bottles of water being thrown onto the track by the crowd, those that are not departing at this time.
Yep, and you can see 4 cars, top 4, Frisacker crossing the line now. 5th car, and then of course Christian Albers, who has already made 1 pit stop. He carried low fuel in qualifying yesterday, and he makes his way through in 6th place, some 46 seconds behind the race leaders. They're going to catch him and lap him before too long, although they're only going a couple of seconds a lap faster. Schumacher and Barrichello are not going at the kind of speed that we would expect if they had Kimi Raikkonen and Fernando Alonso either chasing them or in front of them on the racetrack. So this lap time 1:13.1 for Schumacher, a 12.8 for Barrichello. This is the turn 13 that's caused so much problem for the Michelin runners here this weekend. And the two Ferraris driving in formation as they have from the start then. All the Michelin runners pulling into the pits at the end of the first lap and not taking any further part in this Grand Prix on safety grounds. And some of the Bridgestone technicians, Kees van Rint there from Bridgestone, and you can see the Michelin people as well. Normally would be so intently focused on the race going on, instead rather bashfully wandering around the paddock, wondering where on earth this leaves them as a tyre company in Formula One. Welcome back to the United States Grand Prix on lap 15. We're witnessing one of the greatest farces in the history, and a long and proud history, of Formula One Grand Prix racing. We have just 6 cars taking the start here. The two Ferraris, not surprisingly, are in a league of their own at the front. Schumacher doesn't want to push his car too hard. He's lapping in the high 1:12s. Rubens Barrichello is going a little faster at the moment, but I'm sure, well, they say they're racing. Let's hope they are. And behind them, Tiago Monteiro, the Portuguese driver. In his first season, he's completed all 8 Grand Prix so far, and that's a record for any rookie in Formula One. He's currently on for a podium in 3rd place, ahead of teammate Naren Car de KM, with the two Minardis of Frisacker and Albers 5th and 6th. Why have we only got 6 cars on the track? Why does it say Trulli out, Raikkonen out, etc.? That's because the Michelin tyre here this weekend has been adjudged not safe by the French tyre maker. They will not let their teams race on it, particularly through the high-speed turn 13. They asked the FIA to put a chicane in there so that they could race, but the FIA said no. It would penalise unfairly Ferrari, Bridgestone and the other Bridgestone teams for no fault of their own. The bigger picture was completely forgotten. The interests and common sense were completely forgotten, and instead we are witnessing something truly stupid.
Just over 10 kilos in there, a light car now.
Well, one man who does have some cars out on track at the moment is the Minardi boss, Paul Stoddard. What does he make of it all, Louise?
Well, Paul, your cars are circulating out there on the track. Just explain that decision to us. Why did you go out and race?
This morning, Lou, 9 teams agreed not to race today unless there was a chicane put in to allow the Michelin runners to run. The reason my cars are out there is simple, is because one of those teams decided not to honour that commitment, and it's the only team we're racing in the championship, which is Jordan. So while the Jordan cars continue to circulate, we have no choice. But I have to say, I don't believe that this should have happened. It shouldn't have come to this. What we've done here today is going to live a long time in Formula One supporters and fans around the world's eyes, and it's not good for the sport.
What for you was a sensible resolution of this issue?
We had enough time this morning to put a chicane in, which was what was requested. Would have allowed all teams to compete and race. 9 out of the 10 teams agreed this morning not to race unless that chicane was put in. I believe the FIA and Ferrari did not take an issue, and the FIA did not agree to that chicane, and all of the reasons and the reverberations from the decision to not do that, well, we're hearing it here in the stands. I don't blame people for stamping their feet. The most important thing today was that a race should go ahead, but this is not a race, this is a farce. You
mentioned that there were 9 teams in agreement that you would race. Obviously the team that weren't was Ferrari. Ferrari have, we've seen over this season, traditionally stood with the FIA on matters. Is there an element of that argument continuing through into this, what we have here?
I think it's going to come out that way. I mean, Ferrari are probably in an interesting position. They'll say that the Bridgestone tyres had no problems, and why should they be disadvantaged when they're fighting for the championship? But no one's going to take this race seriously today. No one's going to be happy that Ferrari has a 1-2, and no one's going to be happy that the rest of the cars are not competing. And this is, Formula One's done some crazy things lately with the FIA interfering with regulations, etc., etc. But this one today I think will have far-reaching implications. Always talk about stupid regulations, all the interference in the sport. It needs to stop, and it needs to stop now, because if it doesn't stop, what we're seeing here this afternoon is exactly where Formula One is heading, unless some people quickly act to right the wrongs, and the wrongs start at the top.
Assuming your cars get to the finish, you will score some very valuable points, which under normal circumstances is very difficult for you to do. Will you take no joy from that?
Not the slightest. As you can see, the cars are racing. It's the first time I can ever remember being back out the back of the garage while the cars are racing. I'm not in the slightest bit interested. This is not a race, it's a farce.
Thanks, Paul.
Might be a farce, but both Ferrari drivers could do with the 10 points, because it will launch them right back into the championship contention, however hollow the victory. So we mustn't forget that both Barrichello and Schumacher has 24 points, Barrichello 21. It would put them nicely back in, third, fourth in the championship, with a long way to go this year and a lot of points to be scored. So you can kind of half see why they're out there. I think I've been really interested to know if the Michelin teams ever offered, right, you put the chicanes in, we'll race, but we don't score points today, because they ain't going to score any points anyway. And then we could have gone racing. All right, maybe a Bridgestone Ferrari would have tripped over a Michelin-shod car somewhere and been knocked out of the Grand Prix. That's the risk they would have to have taken to put the show on the road.
They've just called Patrick Friesacker in for his pit stop. Let me ask you a question then. How would you, as a Grand Prix driver who takes risks as a way of life, as yet another piece of debris, that's quite dangerous, the way that this debris is now coming down onto the drivers. That's a risky business. I was going to say to you, it's a beer can that's full of beer that's been thrown down. That would hurt if you hit it at 180 miles an hour. But how would you feel going out there risking your life for 73 laps, knowing that you weren't going to score any points at the end of it? You'd just be racing for fun.
Yeah, but with the chicane, I think it's absolutely clear that's a calculated risk you'd be prepared to take. You put your pressures up, maybe have a concession on your downforce level, and take away that highly loaded 20-second area with a very slow chicane down there at 12. You'd have to give the drivers chance to practice, which is why they should have made the decisions last night. You can't just rock up to a surprise corner. Webber said it'd be like putting a chicane on the main runway at Heathrow. You'd be struggling to see it, but these are the top drivers in the world. They would easily get used to that if they had a few times through. There was a way through this. They could have and should have found a way through this. But let's not forget that both those Ferrari drivers want to steal these 10 points, even if they're cheap.
Well, you're absolutely right, because certainly from Michael Schumacher's point of view, 10 points here today will take him up to 34 in the World Championship, just 3 behind Raikkonen and Trulli. So all of a sudden, everyone thinking that this was a 2-horse race for the World Championship between Raikkonen and Alonso would find that, in fact, Michael Schumacher had joined in as well. And this was anyway, whatever happened with Michelin and this controversy, this was always going to be, from the moment we got here, Ferrari's most competitive weekend so far this season. They look very, very strong in the long runs on Friday, as Thiago Montero, I think that is, or is it Carter-Cayan, dives into the pit lane to make the first Jordan stop of the afternoon. We've had the 2 Minardis in already, and Carter-Cayan it is from 4th place who dives in.
The other irony and stupidity is that it's all about safety, and it's about crowd safety and corner worker safety. We've got marshals on the track retrieving full beer cans down into turn 1 where the cars are approaching at 210 miles an hour, and that's far more dangerous than some of the risks that were being talked about through the weekend.
This is lap 21. Already the Ferraris have caught and lapped one of the Minardis. I believe it's Patrick Friesacker they've caught and lapped. Indeed it is. Just to go back to what I was saying before, why is it that Bridgestone are not having a problem with this turn 13 here? How come they're able to go through there and the Michelins are not? Well, I explained what the problem was with Michelin. They brought carcasses and constructions that simply didn't work through the high loadings on the left rear tyre of that corner. 2 tyres failed during free practice on Friday. A number of others were going to fail, including, I understand, one on Pedro de la Rosa's car and a number of other teams as well. And so clearly that's what led us to Michelin's position. Why haven't the Bridgestones had a problem? Well, part of the reason is because Bridgestone, through their American affiliate Firestone, were racing here in the Indy 500 last month, and feedback was transmitted from the US operation to Japan, to the Formula One team, saying they've resurfaced this track. It is slightly more abrasive, the tyre wear is marginally higher, but they've got these diamond cut grooves that Martin was illustrating in the surface. A number of people certainly feel that that's pit for Montero to come in there. You can hear from Jordan. Certainly a number of teams have felt that contributed to the problem. It's if you go down there and put your hand on it, it's quite rough the way that these grooves have been cut. Bridgestone anyway had some inside information from their IRL teams taking part of the Indy 500. That certainly contributed. And the other factor as well is that Bridgestone generally are a more conservative company than Michelin, who tend to bring a slightly more racy package of tyres to the tracks, looking for competition, looking for performance, where Bridgestone have tended always to err on the side of caution. And certainly Hisao Suganuma, the boss of Bridgestone's Formula One operation here, the chief engineer, he told me a few months ago that you don't take any chances here at Indianapolis. With the huge loadings on that bank corner, you always need to bring a tyre that you're sure is going to be strong enough to take it.
Of course, Dan Weldon won the Indy 500 here, averaging probably 225 miles an hour some laps. Different type of motor car though, in terms of carrying a lot less downforce. These cars are heavily loaded up with downforce to get through the infield section, and they're not designed to do the oval with the 9-degree banking and the downforce and all the loads going through the rear tyre. The shoulder of the tyre overheats and can fail. As I said, there are 11 failures apparently in free practice. 2 of them really showed up to us with the Toyotas flying off the road. But it was a significant issue, no doubt about it. It wasn't. It's not just them nannying their way out of a potential problem this weekend. It was a very serious issue, and it's quite clear who created the problem. The Michelins are not up to the job, but that's not the problem now, is it? The problem was they couldn't find a solution to do something about it.
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, everyone's been wading through the rule books looking for what can and can't be done. Charlie Whiting, the race director, saying yesterday that they simply couldn't use a different tyre that they flew out here overnight because it breaks 5 regulations. But I think perhaps after this we're going to need some strong leadership, and someone's going to need to stand up and say, well, hang on a second, perhaps there should be an overriding rule that Formula One has a responsibility to put on a show to the public. And let's not forget this, Martin. The operating budgets of these teams, Ferrari, Toyota, BMW, Williams, we're talking about 250, 300 million pounds a year. This is a $1 billion road show that isn't able to put a show on for a simple technical reason that could easily be overcome.
Yes, and what's really bothering me is that right from the get-go yesterday morning, when this problem reared its head, you got the feeling of the answer's no. Now what's the question in terms of finding some solutions? Schumacher leads by 0.9 of a second.
Second place to make his first stop of the afternoon. In he comes. Not allowed to change the tyres, remember, just assessing. There's quite a lot of graining on that right front tyre.
It's more pickup really, James, I think. More where that unloaded inside right front doesn't do an awful lot of work around there. It tends to just the rubber rolls across the top, and it picks up a little bit of discarded rubber too, because it's not that heavily. It's a passenger for quite a lot of this lap.
Well, Rubens was tight up behind Michael Schumacher. There is a chance, if they really are racing and he puts his foot down now, that Michael Schumacher will be able to extend his advantage a little bit. It generally helps to be carrying a little bit more fuel in the current rules of Formula One. You need to go, if you can go a lap longer, then you can eke out your advantage. But instead of which, Schumacher, on what presumably is his in lap, is about to encounter a Minardi. Schumacher not coming in this time around. So he was carrying a couple of laps more fuel than Rubens Barrichello. The blue flag's waving. A virtually empty main straight. Normally we'd see the straight awash with cars on a Sunday afternoon. Instead it's a fairly lonely ghost town of a main straight. Just a few flags waving to provide any kind of colour as the Ferrari scythes past the Minardi. Schumacher leading Barrichello, Montero still third, 17 seconds ahead now of Narain Karthikeyan, his teammate, having a much stronger afternoon than the Indian driver. Alba's a lock up there, he's in 5th place at the moment, and Frisacker is in 6th in the second Minardi. Minardi on target for 7 World Championship points today, which if they can keep going with both cars will put them 7th in the World Championship. 8th, I beg your pardon, behind Jordan, who looked like scoring some more points. Lap 26 of the American Grand Prix. Michael Schumacher, the race leader since the start, makes a stop. They had a new left rear tyre ready just in case, but doing a lot of checking just to make sure it's okay. You are allowed to change one tyre in the current rules if it's perceived to be dangerous. There you can see Rubens Barrichello going through to take the lead. Michael Schumacher having a fairly lengthy stop there. So Barrichello assumes the lead, but I think Schumacher took on a bit more fuel than his teammate.
That's an interesting point, James, in that we don't really know if the Bridgestones will do 73 laps around here non-stop. We haven't seen that, obviously, in free practice. With a limitation on engine mileage, they've got to carry an engine through 2 Grand Prix, and they've got a limited number of tyres for the weekend, so they don't do any more laps than they need to do around this 2.6 mile track. So a good look then at the left rear of Michael Schumacher's car. Maybe we're lucky to have 6 cars in this race. There's a useless piece of information for you. 1926 French Grand Prix had 3 starters, which were all Bugattis. Don't know if they were on Michelin's, and only one of them was running in the last 50 miles. Ted has found some very unhappy fans here.
Well, yes, here we are, Martin, in the shadow of the pagoda. Sir, may I ask, how much did you pay for your tickets this weekend?
My tickets were $85 plus $25 for Friday and Saturday practice and qualifying.
Okay, what do you think of what's going on?
I think it's absolutely a crock. People pay lots of money to come and see this race. They've come from as far as I did and further. I came 9.5 hours from Baltimore, Maryland, Washington, D.C. There are people that came from other countries. Indy wouldn't do this. NASCAR wouldn't do this. Why Formula One?
Are you going to follow Formula One anymore?
Only on TV. I will not come back to Indy unless they rectify the situation by offering refunds for everybody that's leaving the facility right now.
It's a very good idea. Let's see what some other people around here think. Gentlemen, what do you think?
We flew
without swearing, please.
I won't. We flew all the way from Mexico just to watch the race. We got
Mexico.
We have airplane tickets, hotel rooms, dinners. We're coming here on this. This is ridiculous. Absolutely unacceptable. It's not right.
And what do you think? Any more views here? Will you follow Formula One anymore?
Yeah, no. I mean, I flew from Panama, and this is absolutely wrong, man. This is BS.
Okay, they're all shouting refunds here. I think you can really understand their point. And look, now the policeman with some very, very upset fans.
Yeah, generally a pretty well-behaved crowd, you'd have to say, Formula One people, but I can imagine there's an awful lot of anger there.
Okay, Michael, so the situation is at the moment we have 2 laps more fuel than Rubens. We have 2 laps more fuel than Rubens, so we need to close him down. Try and save a bit of fuel in case we can get an extra lap to add to the margin, and then we'll see what we can do at the next pit stop.
That's not information we tend to get during a normal Grand Prix, so we never get access to the Ferrari radios. So Michael then is under pressure to close Rubens down. Now we're going to see some faster lap times, I suspect. But he's also been told to save some gas at the same time, so it kind of doesn't quite add up, that one.
It doesn't really. Let's try and work out why we're in this position. It was a slightly strange one, just as we came back from the break, that Michael Schumacher dived in the pits. They were examining that left rear tyre quite carefully, and whilst they were doing so, that pit stop very quietly took 16.8 seconds, where Rubens Barrichello's had taken just 9.5 seconds. So suddenly Michael Schumacher found himself losing 7 seconds, and that meant that Rubens Barrichello was in front of him. Now we heard Chris Dyer there, the race engineer of Michael Schumacher, saying that he's got 2 laps more fuel than Rubens, so basically he needs to get to himself quite close to the back of Barrichello before the second round of stops, and then if he can do that and have a normal pit stop next time round, then he'll get the lead back again. Is it a real fight? Is it all part of the bizarre chicanery which is the US Grand Prix of 2005? Who knows? But it's certainly a race that we'll be talking about for a very long time to come. I think the gentleman who'd flown in from Panama and the gentleman who'd flown in from Mexico will be certainly talking about this when they get back. This is the examination you could see of the left rear tyre of Schumacher's. That's the one that's been causing all the problems this weekend. It takes all the load. There you can see, it takes all the load up on the banking. The tyre tends to want to fold in under itself, and that certainly was the problem that the Michelin runners were encountering. It was the sidewall of the tyre that was having a failure because they underestimated just exactly the nature of the loads that they would be encountering. The comparable corner, Martin, is turn 3 in Barcelona, isn't it? A very, very long right-hander.
Everything looks okay with the tyres, no problem with the tyres, and the wear prediction is fine, more than 100 laps, no problem for wear.
Yeah, the problem is that it's the 9-degree banking plus then the straight. I mean, the tyres are working incredibly hard on the straight. I know what it's like at Le Mans. That tends to be where they go bang, is actually on the straights. Don't forget, at 210 miles an hour, downforce squares with speed. That car is carrying effectively at least twice its own weight. Would drive along the ceiling, it's got more downforce than weight, and that's pushing the tyre into the road. Something's got to be taking the energy and load, transmitting the grip. So the tyres are critical in terms of how they manage that. And my understanding is that a set of Michelins is the best part of 6 kilograms heavier than the Bridgestones. It's a different philosophy of how they make the tread and how they turn it into the side wall, and quite clearly that philosophy has hurt Michelin badly here this weekend.
Well, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway president Tony George was conspicuous by his absence this morning when all the horse trading was going on. He was up in his office in his pagoda. We didn't hear from him at all. We don't know what his view is of this situation, but clearly he's the one that the angry fans are addressing themselves to. They're trying to find him or any Indianapolis official and ask for their money back. And as we heard from that gentleman, $80 for a ticket on race day. We've got about 120,000 people here. That's millions and millions of dollars of ticket money that will be demanded back. You've obviously heavily involved through you being the chairman of the British Racing Drivers Club for a few years, up until quite recently at Silverstone. Put yourself in the promoter's position for this situation. I mean, if this happened at Silverstone, how would you be feeling with the door being bashed down? And obviously, what do you think the liability is here for the Indianapolis Speedway?
I would imagine they're going to be under a lot of pressure to give the money back, although there has been a Grand Prix, there is a race going on. We've still got 6 cars out there, so quite what the legal scenario is on that, I have no idea, frankly. Louise is down at Jordan.
Yes, I'm down here with Adrian Burgess, the sporting director of the Jordan team. Adrian, can you explain to us the decision-making process? Why have you decided to send your cars out to race today when so many other teams aren't?
For us, we're not experiencing any problems with the tyres we've been given to use by Bridgestone, and I think at a high level that these decisions need to be made. We're here to do a job. We want to do a job. All these people have paid a lot of money. They're not going to be happy, but the 6 cars are out there and we're trying to put on a little bit of a show. The people above us need to make the decisions on that.
I understand earlier on today you were one of the 9 teams who were effectively holding fast and saying we will not race unless the chicane is put in. Why did you change that decision?
We want to help, we want to race because everyone's here, but the people above us decided not to put the chicane in. We're here, we want to do a job. We have to appreciate the safety side of it. We don't want to hurt anyone, but where we are with our tyres, we're happy to do the race, so we carry on.
But did it not cross your mind to stand fast with the 9 teams who were saying that they wouldn't race?
That was a decision not for me to make. My decision from my boss was to go out and race, same as Ferrari and Minardi.
Thank you.
Well, that's interesting because that completely contradicts what Paul Stoddart, the boss of Minardi, told Louise a few minutes ago, that he was prepared to go with the Michelin teams and insist on a chicane here this afternoon. Otherwise he wouldn't race. It would have left Ferrari on their own out there. And Jordan, he says, reneged on that deal. Obviously they felt they could get some points here this afternoon, more points than Minardi, so they sent their cars out. That'll take some picking the bones out of that one, because it certainly would have been a very different situation if you'd simply had 2 Ferraris on the grid. That would have put enormous pressure on everybody to try and find a different solution, instead of which Stoddard says he was compelled to send his cars out because he couldn't afford to have Jordan scoring an enormous amount of points here this afternoon, perhaps as many as 10 when they are their closest competitors in Formula 1. And I think it was interesting because Stoddart, I mean, today he stands, even as things are now, to score 7 or 8 World Championship points, which is probably the biggest payday Minardi have had in their entire history. And he was prepared to put that to one side and say, no, actually, this is wrong, and we stand firm with the others. And let's go for a chicane, and if needs be, make it a non-championship race.
Well, Stoddy's standing firm on other issues, isn't he, with the manufacturers? And it has to be mentioned that the key manufacturers that are part of the GPWC that are fighting for a possible breakaway series in the future, all of them are suspended on Michelin tyres, and they're all caught up in this. They're all caught up in the same net today. So one stone is getting a lot of birds there in terms of the politics that are going on there, and the other agendas that are going on underneath the surface of Formula 1. A bit ironic, isn't it, that Ferrari were booed here back in 2002 for showboat. Michael was showboating at the finish, got it slightly wrong, and Barrichello won the race. And the American fans couldn't get their head around that one either. but today they're really the only ones putting on the show.
Well, I mentioned before that Tony George has not been seen, particularly the boss of Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Apparently, I'm being told he was in the meetings, but he hasn't made any comment as yet on what he feels about what's happening here. So, just for the record, Tony George was at the meetings. He did know what was going on, but no comment from him as yet. As you can see, some people driving out of here. An awful lot of question marks hanging over Formula One, particularly its position in America going forward here. There was some talk before this weekend that maybe we might have another American Grand Prix in Las Vegas. Bernie Eccleston talking about perhaps using the Strip, the Las Vegas Strip for a Grand Prix. We had a race there in the early 1980s in the car park of Caesars Palace. But this looked like a permanent home of Formula One. It looked nicely set up. We're having a great championship, and then this happened. Well, we saw some beer cans being thrown onto the track in the path. One of them almost hit Michael Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello. Ted Kravitz has found one of Indiana's finest policemen, who is apparently concerned with crowd security now.
Yeah, absolutely, James. This is Captain Bob Karwowski of the Marion County Sheriff's Department. Well, Captain, what have you found? Lots of fans getting very unhappy around here. What are your officers saying?
We just noticed there's a select few that are voicing their opinion, but for majority, most of the fans are being good.
Do you ever get any kind of crowd trouble at other motor racing events here, the Brickyard 400 or the Indy 500?
The Indy 500 is probably our biggest problem. The Brickyard 400 are a good group of race fans. Same way with the Formula One, very good, dedicated group of race fans.
So you've never had angry fans like this?
Not at all.
What do you think? What will happen if they start to get a bit rowdy?
Well, basically, we have a contingency of state police, Marion County Sheriff's Department, IPD, which is Indianapolis Police Department, and the Speedway Police Department, along with the FBI, for a contingency of probably about 400 to 500 police officers, and we will deal with the problem.
Thank you, Captain.
Okay, I'm now with Jenson Button, who's actually walking out of the circuit. Jenson, what kind of response are you expecting to get from the fans when you go through these turnstiles?
I'm sure it won't be great, but there's not much we can do about that. You know, it's terrible for them, I'm sure. You know, they've come to watch a Formula One race here. But we can't do much. You know, we have to think about our safety first, and if it's not safe to drive around here for whatever reason, you know, we can't drive. You know, that's basically it.
This could have been sorted, surely.
You'd hope so, wouldn't you? But that's not really for me to comment on. You know, there's been a lot of discussion about trying to resolve the issue, but they haven't come to a decision, so we couldn't risk it. You know, it's too dangerous.
If it was you making the decision, what would you have done?
Well, it's difficult, really. You know.
Go on.
Whatever I say will be wrong, so I'm not going to say anything. Anyway, just got to say sorry to the fans. Really, it's obviously disappointing for them. So, you know, just got to look forward to Manicourt now, and hopefully we'll get a good reception.
Thanks, Jenson.
Yeah, it may not pay to wear your team shirt at Indianapolis Airport tonight. You go put your pass in your pocket and you put a t-shirt on or something and take the team shirt off, because it's normally an absolute zoo down there anyway after the race. But imagine those people going back to places like Panama. Even if you're going to the west coast of America, it's almost like a long-haul flight, isn't it, from places like this? And it's not just the money they've spent getting into the track, it's what they've spent on their hotels, on their airfares, and
yeah, the American race fans, I've known them for quite some time. I have to say they're very passionate and very knowledgeable, and they do travel a long distance. Last night I did a charity auction with Sir Jackie Stewart for his Grand Prix Mechanics Charitable Trust, and we raised $14,000 from some paddock passes that were available for this race. And the man who bought them was extremely happy, extremely enthusiastic. But he's been in the middle of it all this morning, watching all the politics going on. The crowds in the stands, they've been kept in the dark and they don't like it at all. This is lap 38 of 73, half distance in the American Grand Prix of the 6 cars, and Barrichello still leads Schumacher by 2.7 seconds. We know has 2 laps more fuel than Barrichello at this stage, and that could be decisive in the outcome. At the moment they're lapping in the mid 1 minute 12s. Schumacher just set the fastest first sector of the race so far. Barrichello, his fastest lap of the race so far, 1:12.3. So it's the pace is hotting up a little bit now at half distance in this race. Generally speaking, we're looking at the second stop sometime around about the late 40s, perhaps around about lap 50, with Schumacher coming in a couple of laps later than Barrichello. Montero we saw pitting fairly early on, Kartikeyan as well, Frisacker and Albers. Let's just listen to Barrichello. See how hard he's working the car and the engine. He's in the fiddly, twisty section at the end of the lap. Look how much steering lock is required. First gear corners here at Indianapolis. Complete contrast to the high speed stuff on the banking. 210 miles an hour the top speed there. 56, 60 miles an hour in the fiddly stuff on the infield. So Barrichello trying to push out a bit more of a margin over Schumacher, looking for around 3 seconds plus. He has got 3 seconds now, so he's starting to pull away a little bit from his team leader. Montero still third, Kartikeyan fourth, Frisacker fifth, and Albers sixth. And all of the Michelin runners have decided not to take part in the races here this afternoon. And that's what the Colombians think of it, particularly the Juan Pablo Montoya fans. They're not happy at all, are they? Lap 40 of the American Grand Prix at Indianapolis. You're going to remember this day for a while, aren't you? I think we all are. This is the greatest sporting farce since the Grand National that never got started. In fact, it blows that into the weeds. Certainly the biggest farce in the history of Formula One racing. We have just 6 cars have started this Grand Prix. The 2 Ferraris are out front, Barrichello and Schumacher, around 3 seconds apart. Fastest lap of the race so far that last time through from Barrichello. He knows he's got 2 laps less fuel than Michael Schumacher for the second round of pit stops, and so he's vulnerable to his team leader. Managed to pass him in the first round of pit stops, but unless he can pull out a margin here, he's going to get repassed in the second round of stops in about 8 to 10 laps from now. Third place at the moment, the Portuguese driver Tiago Monteiro in the Jordan, ahead of teammate Narain Kartikeyan. Then the 2 Minardis of Frisacker and Albers are 5th and 6th. We've had full cans of beer being thrown at the Ferraris from the crowd. Very unhappy at what's happening here. For those of you just joining us, we've got all the main Michelin teams have not taken part in this Grand Prix. Michelin advising them that the tyre they brought here this weekend in Indianapolis was not safe to race on. We had a huge accident on Friday just coming out of this corner here for Ralf Schumacher. It's where this tyre let go about there, and he hit the wall on the outside. And following that investigation, Michelin found that there was a problem with the tyres they'd brought here. And although they were able to qualify yesterday, all of their runners, with Jarno Trulli giving Toyota its first ever pole position in Formula One, with Kimi Raikkonen, who looked very strong for the race win here this weekend, alongside him on the front row of the grid. After endless meetings and toing and froing, and nobody really grasping the nettle and taking an overview and saying, look, we have a responsibility here to the public at large around the world, let's put a race on regardless. We ended up with a situation where all the Michelin teams were demanding the chicane be placed on that high-speed corner. The FIA, the governing body of the sport, refused to do so, and so all the Michelin teams came in at the end of the formation lap and didn't take the start of the race. Ted Kravitz is down in the pits.
Yes, and Sir Frank Williams has actually called another meeting of the Michelin team bosses. In there are representatives, team boss of Toyota, Peter Sauber, Ron Dennis, Flavio Briatore, Christian Horner of Red Bull, and Nick Fry of BAR. They're all sitting round a table in the Williams hospitality area. and God knows what they're talking about, really. I mean, where do we go from here? What will happen with the Michelin situation? A lot of people down here, James, by the way, talking about what this means for Michelin and a single tyre formula. Of course, the FIA released some skeleton rules for the new 2008 championship, and that did include a single tyre supply. A lot of people down here talking about whether this is the first step on the road to that.
No problem.
Yes, well, they may as well sit down and talk about it. It's not often they're all in the same place together with time to spare, but it'll be primarily on the agenda damage limitation from this weekend for Michelin, for Formula One. Actions and reactions they're going to take this week, because for sure there will be plenty of mudslinging going on, I think, through this coming week between the governing body and Michelin and the teams. So there'll be an agenda going on in there. They'll not just be sitting around twiddling their thumbs saying what a bad day it is. There'll absolutely be a very clear message they're going to want to go home with from this weekend, and synchronise their watches, really make sure they're all on the same hymn sheet as they head back to Europe. I think there's some adrenaline some juices beginning to flow between the two Ferrari drivers. They're way down in the 1:12s now, more the kind of pace we were expecting. Surely they've knocked the revs back to save their engines anyway, but as I said earlier on, Barrichello wants the 10 points, so does Michael Schumacher. It will launch either of them, straight into a championship contending position. So Michael's not going to want to give up 2 of those, that's for sure. So I think we'll still see some solid racing between these two Ferraris as we get towards the end of the Grand Prix. I saw a no radio sign out for Barrichello. Whether that means his radio's gone, or whether that means they don't want him talking on the radio because we're picking it up here in the commentary box, I don't know. It's being transmitted around the world. Barrichello is a 10th down on this lap to Michael Schumacher in the first sector, and as I say, I think they're now beginning to push harder.
Louise Goodman is down in the Red Bull garage.
Yeah, I'm here with Darren Nichols, who's the chief mechanic of Red Bull. Darren, you, like everybody involved in Formula One, you put in long hours, you're very passionate about the sport. What do you and all the guys in the garage think about this?
It's obviously very frustrating. We've been here most of a week now. So obviously there's a lot of hard work goes into the preparation of it. And then obviously through circumstances outside our control, Michelin haven't got the full confidence in the tyres that they've provided with us for here. So all the team principals have got together and come up with a decision that, unfortunately for us, we've just got to go along with it.
Presumably you guys, you psyched yourself up, you're on a high prior to the start of the race. Are you all feeling a bit flat now?
It's obviously, the primary reason we're here is to actually go racing, same as the drivers. So the drivers are obviously frustrated by, events that have unfolded, so, and we just go along with that. There's not a lot we can do, so ultimately at the end of the day, safety's got to be paramount, and nobody wants to see anybody get hurt, so it's just one of those unfortunate things. Just feel sorry for the big crowd that's turned up today.
Presumably when you get home, your mates down at the pub are going to be asking you about this. How would you explain it to them?
It's very difficult. I mean, obviously people are sitting at home on their sofa, so it's very difficult for them to understand the consequences, potential consequences of something when it could go wrong. So it's very difficult. You just got to try and say, look, for safety reasons we couldn't compete. People will have their own opinions and their own views on it, as I'm sure everybody in the pit lane has as well. So it's one of those things, decisions being made, all teams have agreed to do it, so we've just got to go along with it, I'm afraid.
Thanks for talking to us, Darren. We'll let you get on with the pack-up.
Thank you.
Chief mechanic of Red Bull Racing there, giving us an insight into how hard they've worked. They came straight from Montreal. They flew down here and worked on the cars. They arrived here on Monday. As you said, we've been here all week. A lot of preparation goes into this. It's a huge roadshow, the Formula One roadshow, and well, today it looks a bit farcical, doesn't it? Frisacker then diving into the pits. He is the 5th man on track. He was. And teammate Christian Albers was just under half a minute behind him. A little bit of problems getting the refuelling hose on there onto Frisacker's car. This is being a very long stop. This will hand the 5th place back to Albers. And this is really going to be Minardi's only chance to score points, I think, this season. Same for Jordan in many ways. They really have dropped off the back, both of these teams in Formula One this year. The performance of everybody else has gone up so much. It's been leaving Jordan and Minardi behind, so it's a huge payday for them. But we've already heard from Paul Stoddart that he didn't want to take part in the race with his Minardi team. He wanted to stand firm with the Michelin teams in demanding a chicane, but he says that Jordan broke their promise and insisted that they were going to race and go for the points here today, and that gave him no choice but to race as well, because he couldn't afford to give them an opportunity to get so far ahead of him in the World Championship. We will find out, hopefully, the truth of that situation, exactly who's telling the truth there, but certainly it's another aspect that's deep.
Smeared across the face and tends to fill the grooves up, but that one's looking very heavily worn too.
Certainly is. There's Schumacher then. This is the critical part of the race as far as the two Ferraris are concerned. He's about to come up behind one of the two Minardis to lap him. Hopefully, from his point of view, he'll be able to get through cleanly. This is the short back straight where they hit 180 miles an hour before turning into turn 8 at around about 70 miles an hour. Still plenty of fans sitting on the bank there. You can see there's a golf course in the background here called Brickyard Crossing. It's another leisure activity available here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which really has to be seen to be believed. It's a vast amphitheatre surrounded by these grey metal grandstands covering a huge amount of space. As you can see, home of the Indianapolis 500, as into the pits dives Michael Schumacher at the end of lap 51.
Not flying around in that pit lane, James. That's quite a tricky one because it's full speed on the way in, up against the wall. You've got to get it all slowed down by the line, and he definitely was not cruising in there. Ted is
Michael Schumacher into the ghost pit lane. There are a ring of blisters actually around the right rear Bridgestone tyre of Michael's car, but otherwise they're looking pretty good nick. A load of fuel, and he's out on his way in this meaningless American Grand Prix.
Well, here's Rubens Barrichello down the straight. Schumacher's up to speed. Who's going to get into the first corner first? It's going to be Barrichello. He chops his team leader, but Schumacher doesn't give him any space. And would you believe it? But the only two competitive cars out there, and they almost took each other out of the American Grand Prix. I'd love to see a replay of that. I'm sure we'll get one soon. But Michael Schumacher is in the lead. That just shows you what a hard racer he is. He wasn't having any of it. You'd have to say, looking at it from the angle we were looking at it, that Barrichello had the corner, but Schumacher held his line and Barrichello ended up on the grass.
No showboating going on there. Barrichello will be seriously razzed about that. He was so upset that Michael overtook him on the last lap of the Grand Prix in Monaco. He thought he'd stay behind him. I don't really understand why he was upset, but he was after the Grand Prix, and he will not be comfortable with that either. You'd have to say Barrichello just had the edge, had the line into the corner. Michael would not yield at all.
We pulled you in early to
heavy stuff in a very heavy weekend for Formula One between the two Ferrari teammates. Albers in 5th place here, the leading Minardi runner. He rejoins his teammate Friesacker. Crosses the line now, so you can see that's a battle between the two Minardis now as Albers gets up to speed, and Friesacker isn't going to be fast enough to pass him, so Albers retains 5th place, Friesacker 6th. Schumacher leading, Barrichello with 21 laps to go here at Indianapolis. Montero is 3rd for Jordan, ahead of Carter Cahan, 4th for Jordan, Albers and Friesacker. 6 runners started this race, 6 still going.
Barrichello heavily held up there.
Just outbraked himself a little bit there, didn't he? He wanted the line, he wanted the corner, but he came through. There you go, on board with Barrichello. Yeah, just carrying a little bit too much speed into that corner, but that's a tight call. Here it is again from a different angle, and you can Barrichello just carrying too much speed in his eagerness to get through.
Well, I think had he been able to take his normal line, he would have been fine, but he had to get back into the brakes with Michael taking up the apex there. Michael was blocking a wheel as well. He was struggling to break down, get the speed down into the corner, but they didn't touch. But that one was pretty close, wasn't it? And that's taken the smile off Jean Tot's face.
Certainly has. A little feud broke out between them after the Monaco Grand Prix. As you remember, when Schumacher passed Barrichello on the last lap, that was quickly resolved between them. They're both very competitive individuals, and I should imagine that they'll have some words to say. There was a little moment between them here actually on the restart behind a safety car last year, I think it was. which also got Barrichello's attention, where Schumacher was a little bit rude with him. But that just shows you how hard Schumacher wants to win. There's Chris Dyer, Schumacher's race engineer. We heard from him on the radio earlier on, telling Schumacher the position that he had 2 laps more fuel than Barrichello, which certainly was a pivotal part of the story. And despite the fact that Schumacher lost 7 seconds behind Barrichello in the first pit stops, he's managed to make it up and retain the lead. To Minardi's, Albers in front of Friesacker. Dutch driver Christian Albers and the Austrian driver Patrick Friesacker. ...19 laps to go in the strangest Grand Prix in the 50-plus year history. of this sport. There is the girlfriend of Christian Albers, the Dutch driver in the Minardi. He's currently in 5th place. There he is out on track with teammate Patrick Friesacker, the Austrian, in 6th. Michael Schumacher is leading the Grand Prix from Rubens Barrichello by 1.3 seconds. Tiago Monteiro is 3rd for Jordan. Kartikeyan 4th for Jordan as well. Only 6 runners in this race because the Michelin teams all withdrew after the parade lap. Their tyres not safe. They gave plenty of notice to the FIA, but the FIA refused to put a chicane in or make any modification to the track just because Michelin had brought the wrong tyres here this weekend. Or is it a business? I think today the answer would fall very much on the latter side. But Schumacher and Barrichello seem determined to make us think it is definitely still a sport.
Please, we'll bring 2 cars to finish.
Yep. Just reducing the RPM and making sure we're on 50 easy. Not to break anything.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry to report to you back at home, the race is effectively over. They've been told to cruise to the finish. They're now back 2 seconds off the pace. Often Ferrari race to the second stop and whoever's in the lead takes the lead. So that little shenanigans down into turn 1 was for real, was for the race, and Rubens now realises that's cost him 10 points. Michael Schumacher leads Rubens Barrichello at a very steady pace by half a second.
See that just judging by the first sector lap times of lap 61, 13 to go here at Indianapolis, that the 2 Ferraris have responded to that message from Ross Brawn and have dropped their pace by 3/4 of a second in the first sector alone. So they're going to be about 2 seconds a lap slower than they have been when they were racing each other in the run up to the second stop and just shortly afterwards. But Ferrari with well, effectively an open goal rather, yawning in front of them, with the Michelin teams not taking part in this Grand Prix. They have to bring 2 cars to finish. Anything less would be absolute folly. They very nearly took each other out, but they didn't in the end. And once again, Michael Schumacher, as so often before, is the one who comes out in front, with poor old Rubens Barrichello wondering what he ever has to do to get in front of his teammate. Welcome back to Indianapolis Motor Speedway. 11 laps to go in this bizarre American Grand Prix, which only ever had 6 starters. This is one of them, Narain Kartikeyan. He's been in 4th place really all afternoon. Teammate Tiago Monteiro considerably faster than him here today. Half a second a lap quicker, in fact, throughout the Grand Prix. He's half a minute behind his teammate. Monteiro then, the Portuguese driver, heading for his first podium at the age of 28 in his debut season in Formula 1. All of the Michelin teams did not take part in this Grand Prix. They pulled into the pit lane at the end of the parade lap because they felt that the tyres were unsafe. It was the advice of Michelin. They couldn't break that.
1 minute 15. That's fine. That'll see us to the end of the race.
Carter Kayan then being told what the target is, and one of the team owners, Sir Frank Williams, has been having a meeting during this Grand Prix with his fellow team owners using the Michelin tyres. He's now talking with Ted Kravitz.
Well, Frank, before we ask you what you decided or what you talked about in that meeting, just what would you like to say to all the fans watching at home?
It's a seriously sad day for Formula 1. The teams on Michelin tyres were told unequivocally by their supplier that the supplier, namely Michelin, could not undertake to guarantee the safety of those tyres. There have been several incidents on Friday which have put a car on the wall. The teams felt totally unable to ask their drivers to risk safety and proceed to a race. What we wanted a chicane, which is what the best solution would have been. The FIA refused to sanction a chicane. Really sadly, we could not race our cars. The tyres were not safe. Cars have landed in the wall.
You've been talking to all the other Michelin runners. What have you been talking about in that meeting?
Just a suitable press release.
Which will be issued after the race?
Any minute now, yes.
And Frank, you love racing. I love racing. We all love racing. What does this mean for Formula 1 as a future?
Well, Formula 1's okay, just very damaged. Very damaged, maybe irrevocably so, in North America. And the teams are very deeply unhappy about the situation, which, if we'd been listened to, would easily have been averted.
Thanks very much, Frank.
Always speaks with great clarity, doesn't he, Frank? And as we thought, the meeting would be all about positioning damage limitation from the team bosses of the Michelin shod cars. As we're on the banking, the crucial banking there, turn 13, down into the pit straight. And I think my own question's now been answered about how they'll sort the running order out for the next Grand Prix, because it's based on the previous Grand Prix finishing order. Well, they all retired into the pits in grid order, and therefore Coulthard will have to be out first. He was the last of the Michelin runners on the grid. Trulli will be out just seventh towards the end, so he'll get a big advantage. Those that qualified well on Michelin tyres will now have an advantage in Manicourt in 2 weeks' time. And those that didn't will be going out absolutely first, because that's how they're showing on the scoreboard here, with Trulli in 7th place, being the first of the retirements at the end of the warm-up lap.
Well, it's been a poor day for Formula 1, but let's just remind ourselves of why we love this sport. Let's ride on board with Patrick Friesacker here. No, let's not. We cut to Michael Schumacher. Lap 66 of 73. He's 2.5 seconds ahead of Rubens Barrichello. How did he get here? Well, he led him off the very thin grid, only 6 cars taking the start, and he led him away. At the first pit stop, he took 16.8 seconds because the team were slightly concerned about his left rear tyre. They wanted to have a really good look at it. That was 7 seconds longer than Rubens Barrichello's pit stop took. So that gave Barrichello a 7-second lead, which Schumacher was able to scythe through during the second stint. He also had 2 laps more fuel in the car than Barrichello. We heard that from Schumacher's race engineer Chris Dyer live here on ITV on the radio. And well, when Schumacher came in for his second stop, he rejoined just as Barrichello came down the virtually empty pit straight. And you can see the little computer they have that tells you who everybody is, where they are on the racetrack. That's part of how they decide when to make pit stops, when to feed the cars back out onto the racetrack. A very important device that for the race strategist Ross Brawn there on the pit wall. And as they piled into this first corner, with Schumacher coming out of the pit lane, they very nearly took each other off in what is a 2-horse race for the win. Barrichello having to take to the grass. He tried to go around the outside. Schumacher, as always, completely uncompromising and unyielding, gave him the hard shoulder. And poor old Barrichello once again is staring at the rear wing of his team leader. 7 times a world champion, 83 times a Grand Prix winner. And well, even the Indian fans whose man Narain Karthikeyan is running fourth are a bit disillusioned with what they've seen here this afternoon. We've heard from a lot of people. Louise has been working hard down there. She's now caught up with BAR Honda team principal Nick Fry.
Yes, Nick Fry has just walked out of the Williams office where all of the team principals have been gathered together preparing a statement. Nick, I wonder if you could give us the gist of what the statement says.
Yeah, the statement's firstly a humble apology. Really, we've been put in a very difficult position here. We've been advised by Michelin the tyres were unsafe to use. We've been working with Michelin over the weekend, and at about 6:30 this morning we were told that we couldn't use those tyres and we couldn't use an alternative tyre that was being investigated. So we were really left with no option but not to race. What we tried to do was to Michelin asked for a chicane to be installed in front of the bank part of the circuit, and we were all prepared to run with a Michelin with a chicane in place, even if we didn't score points or even if the Bridgestone runners were at the front of the grid. We just wanted to please the fans. Unfortunately, those requests were turned down. So we were really left with no alternative. We just could not send the drivers out on tyres that we were advised were unsafe.
Were there any other discussions held or decisions taken in that meeting as to where we go from here?
No, we really haven't got that far yet. I think that the main discussion is really about being sorry for the situation. We really couldn't do anything about it, so we can't run the tyres on the cars on the tyres that are provided. So
just to reiterate, can you just tell us again what's in this press release?
First thing is an apology to everyone. Secondly is just a simple chronology of the events with Michelin, telling us that the tyres are unsafe to use. Simple as that.
Are you embarrassed?
Very much so. No, we'd have loved to have run today, especially from our point of view. Jensen was towards the front of the grid, so we look good.
Thanks, Nick.
Now things changed, don't they, in that I remember standing on the grid in Adelaide when it was pouring with rain. Once it wouldn't have worked today, but it was absolutely pouring with rain. Senna wanted a race, Prost didn't. Most of the rest of us were unsure. Bernie Ecclestone walked down the grid and said, "Get in your car, the race is about to start." And that was pretty much how it worked in those days. But as I say, that wouldn't have worked. That strategy wouldn't have worked today because of this critical problem with the tyres and reliability and today's world, basically, James, isn't it?
I think that's absolutely a brilliant point, to be honest. I was talking earlier on about the 1982 San Marino Grand Prix. It was all part of the war between the English teams, led ironically by Bernie Ecclestone and Max Mosley, what was known as the FOCA teams, against Jean-Marie Balestre and the FISA teams, the manufacturers as it was in those days. And we had some strange things then. We had 14 cars in that race. There was another drivers' strike in South Africa back in the late 1970s as well, but somehow that was a different world, and the world wasn't watching to the same extent as it is now, with hundreds of millions of people tuning in around the world, and the ticket prices weren't as high for punters travelling around to see races. We didn't have anything like the level of sponsorship involved, and even the manufacturers were not spending the kind of money they are. Toyota, for example, spending upwards of £250 million a year. That's the statement that's going out from the Minardi team about what's going on today. That's not necessarily the statement that Nick Fry was just referring to, and so it's a different world really from some of the things that happened in the past, the standoffs, and yet a lot of the faces down there, a lot of the people, Ecclestone, Ron Dennis and Frank Williams, they were around in those days. The world has definitely moved on a little bit, and somehow or other they weren't able to just find unison and find agreement when really the world was crying out for an agreement today.
Absolutely. It's not totally without precedent. We all went home from the Belgian Grand Prix in '85 because the track broke up. We had to abandon the race and went back and raced later in the year. As it happens in that season, we were in Dallas and the track was breaking up. I was already in hospital with smashed up legs by that time because I was one of the victims of the track breaking up. But there have been problems over the years of technical nature or weather. And look back in Japan, we had last year we had the typhoon coming through that nearly stopped the race, didn't it? So it's not totally without precedent, but as I said at the beginning of the programme, this one they could have found a fix to somehow.
Oh, for sure. I mean, a track breaking up which can't be repaired is one thing, especially if you agree to come back. It's clear where the blame lies, everybody deals with it. But this is a very strange situation. There was a competitive aspect to it as well, obviously from Bridgestone's point of view. Why should they lose out when Michelin had made such a bad mistake? But clearly there would have been a big penalty on the Michelin side, whatever the result, whatever the outcome today. But for the sake of the show, for the sake of the image of Formula One worldwide, and all those of you who've stayed with us here on ITV to watch this bizarre motor race, which I'm sure we'll remember for a very long time for all the wrong reasons, I'm sure that a solution could have come up with. It needed strong leadership, and it wasn't there on the day.
lot of fans. We're talking about the fans that are leaving, but there's a humongous number of people still in all the grandstands around the circuit. Quite what their reaction is going to be at the end will be interesting to see, but don't imagine that it's a ghost town down there in the grandstands. You'll see from certain shots on the TV too. A lot of people still around here.
Probably Ferrari fans, the most of them, and I guess they take their victories whichever way they come. Here's Narain Karthikeyan. He's been outclassed today, the Indian driver, by his teammate Montero. Both 28 years old, both in their first year in Formula 1. Karthikeyan making his way up through Formula 3 and recently Formula Nissan World Series as well. Montero, he raced over here in America in the Champ Car Series. And he's certainly shown a clean pair of heels to Karthikeyan here. He's going to get his first podium in only his 9th Grand Prix start. And although he'll always know it was under strange circumstances because the big names of Formula 1 like Trulli, Raikkonen, Button, Alonso, Montoya were not out on the racetrack on the day. Nevertheless, it's going to be his third place and a trophy in his cabinet, probably the only trophy he'll ever get. And well, you'd have to say that he did beat his teammate on the day. The crowd below us are moving towards the fence now to see the conclusion of this Grand Prix. The booing is rising in volume, and I think it will be certainly an evidence when we have the podium a little bit later on. There's Frisacker in 6th place. As you can see, just all six runners. We've had so far, dare I say it, 100% reliability in this Grand Prix, partly because only for short periods of it were most of the runners really going as fast as they possibly could. But certainly we had a race between Barrichello and Michael Schumacher. There's no doubt about that, and it very nearly put them both off the racetrack. Schumacher is on his last lap. Barrichello has backed off 3.5 seconds behind him, and this is going to be win number 84 of his career for Michael Schumacher. Just coming down the short back straight.
It's gone quite quickly actually, hasn't it? It's amazing. It's the end of the race. It's been zooming past. Bet there's been more boring ones in the past from time to time when McLaren were absolutely dominating it and winning 15 out of 16 races or whatever it was. And when we used to settle in for the afternoon with one set of tyres and a full tank of gas. But anyway, Michael Schumacher then moving towards the end.
Indeed he is. There's been so much controversy in his career, always he seems to be in the middle of it, this time not necessarily his fault. He once again wins a very controversial Grand Prix. And the Ferrari comes out of that turn 13, which caused the problems. Across the line goes Michael Schumacher to win the 6th and possibly last Grand Prix here at Indianapolis. Rubens Barrichello finishes 2nd. Thiago Montero finishes a lap down in 3rd place to take a trophy home here, and here's the reaction of the crowd. A mixture of delight and sheer horror from the crowd. Certainly the Ferrari fans are pleased. Here's Karthikeyan in the Jordan. A 3 and 4 finish for the Jordan team. Across the line he goes, and then the two Minardis. Christian Albers is going to finish in 5th place, and Patrick Frisacker in 6th place.
If Michael does a victory leap on the podium, I'm personally going to go and punch him.
I don't think there's much chance of that. I don't suppose he'll want to go on the podium. He'll want to get out of here as quickly as possible. So 11 points, I make it, for the Jordan team here this afternoon. Certainly was worth their while. It'll be very interesting to see what exactly did happen in terms of the agreement regarding the chicane. It seems that Minardi were prepared to do it, and the two Minardis.
Thank you.
3rd, Karthikeyan 4th, Albers 5th, Frisacker 6th. And Raikkonen actually is 8th, so that's where he'll go out. I remind you again, picking up rubber.
Picking up rubber to put a kilo or two on the car because they run these very skinny. They have to be 600 kilograms, including the driver, when they're in Parc Fermé. But as they wear up the consumables such as brakes and fluids, the brake pads and discs, that is, and as the tyres wear down as well, they lose about 5 to 6 kilograms. The driver loses weight as well, which they have to factor in terms of obviously sweating inside the car. Not that I think the Ferrari drivers have sweated that much today. Barrichello kicking up the dust as he comes over the line to pick up his 8 World Championship points, and Michael waving at the crowd and then kind of, well, what can I do about it? Yeah, what they were talking about on the radio is that Raikkonen effectively, because he was the second car in of those that elected not to take the start, that means he's effectively 8th and will run quite a long way into the qualifying session in Manicourt, which will give him or minimise his pain in terms of where he can probably start on the grid next time round.
Yeah, the advantage of that obviously is the winner of the previous Grand Prix goes last, and tracks generally, because we have single lap qualifying in Formula 1, the first car out, which in this case in France in 2 weeks' time is going to be David Coulthard, will encounter a track that's considerably slower with dust and bits and pieces on it than the last car out. Tracks generally clear up and get faster by about 0.8 to a second a lap, so it's quite a big advantage for them. Down at Jordan is Louise Goodman.
Yes, I'm here with Colin Collins, the boss of the Jordan team. Colin, congratulations, I suppose, are in order, but how are you feeling about this podium finish and this large points haul that you've got today?
Well, I think the team did a good job. Of course, the situation is not pleasant, but I mean, we are not responsible for Michelin and for the other teams. I mean, they are not stopping races when we have tyre problems, so that's racing.
Will you be able to enjoy this podium finish as much as you would under normal circumstances?
I'm a realistic person, and I will still be a realistic person, and we are looking forward to our new car for the next race, and then we will see. I mean, the times we overlapped Minardi, we are ahead by far of Minardi, because Mr. Stoddard is always practicing big marketing, so that's the case. I cannot change it. That's it.
Thanks very much.
Puts BAR to the back of the 10 teams with 0 points, and of course what this does is gives them a payback next year. They'll get more travel money in next year with these points for Minardi and Jordan, so financially it does help them significantly.
Just listen to this.